The Fate of Heroes, starring Patrick, Devin, Rob, Tamara, and John as the Game Master.
Resurgence. Coda. We return to revolutionary America. Sitting in a British prison cell, Jacob wakes up. He looks around trying to figure out how he got there, where Leelui is, and better yet, why on earth he has a body. He looks at himself and realizes that he feels like a teenager, not like a full-grown person. And he can even feel acne on his face and all of the problems of being in that age of massive change. And he is stunned by it. As he sits up, looks around and tries to figure out what's going on, and says meekly, "Hello?" A kindly voice greets him, an old fellow sitting in the cell opposite.
I did it. I finally did it. I reversed the problem of the past. Corrected my mistake. Good morning, Jacob. Shall we go?
Jacob looks at him, smiles, and says, "Grampy Raspy, so this is why you got arrested." Somewhere else, in a far distant place, on a distant planet, stands a young woman. She is green-haired, wears tiny glasses, even though she likely doesn't need to anymore. And she stares at a ship, one that is very familiar to our heroes. And she looks over at Melandra. She smiles and says, "Are you ready? I think it's time to go." Melandra smiles back. "Yes, Eldred, it is past time to go." Eldred, Lena, now walking, and Melandra walk on board the ship once known to the wardens. And as it starts to take off from the Anua homeworld, she looks back at her planet once more and says, "We'll see you soon, friends. But first, I gotta find Leo's friends and let him know what has happened here, and hopefully give him some closure." Back on Earth, another man stands staring at destruction and chaos in this rag-pitted hole that once was a city. He stares gleefully at the destruction that he's wrought, laughs at himself and at others as he slaps his hands and explosions of sounds tear into buildings, the screams of the dying, the cries of those who fear him reach his ears. Finally, in his brain, the old world is paying for what it did to him. These liars, these Anua, and their filthy, fake, imitation world are paying the price for his betrayal. How dare they take his life away from him? How dare they give him this artificial gift? Everyone will pay. Everyone will know. Everyone will hear the decibel as it wreaks havoc with the world. He smiles to himself, looks down at his handiwork, yet another building torn apart, yet more fake ones paying the price for what they did. He sighs to himself and realizes just how good it feels to be able to reach out and destroy things. And he wonders why he didn't do this before. In what was once the Oval Office in Washington years ago, an older lady sits at a chair. The old wooden desks, the old flags, the old carpets have all been ripped to shreds. The blood stains on the walls had been there for years. She refused to allow anyone to clean that mess off. And she stole glances at anyone that even remotely dare try. She was the leader of this new world. She was the one who would decide what was to be done and what wasn't to be done. Eris, leader of the world, smiled at her chaos, smiled at the destruction she had wrought over 5 years as she pushed those insolent, annual-loving freaks back and continued to put pressure on them. She hoped to kill her old nemesis soon, to feel his throat close in her hands, to hear the crunching sound of his throat and his bones cracking under the pressure, to know that she took the life of the president of the remaining freedom so-called people. To be able to destroy them is what she hoped. To be able to bring that new state to its knees. How dare they oppose her? How dare they try? Those that will not follow will fall. Those who oppose will be destroyed. And then, and only then, will peace reign. In her terms, in her ways. She had set this up for years, planned, plotted with her masters. She created the mad court. Her very kingdom relied on the court to enforce her will, and she brought the masters what they so longingly had desired. Sure, she'd been slightly insane. Sure, she had been locked away behind closed doors. It had taken her years to recover from the disaster and the failure that she'd had at New Saint City. But she'd remembered. She'd plotted. She'd planned. She'd threatened. She'd cursed all of those who thought to bring destruction to her. And she waited. Even if her companion abandoned her early, she was ready. And she made contact. And once again, the masters made sure she was in charge. She was in control. And all the rest would listen to her and obey her. She killed all of those who would oppose her. And with that destruction, she wrought a new world. Or at least so she thought, until those wardens started to put up a fight. Thankfully, most of the more critical ones had been killed. But there remained still some. And they were deadly and dangerous. And she sent her minions to destroy them. And many have been killed so far in this war. But not long now, she would pay them back in full. There would be no more wardens, no more heroes, only Eris and her discordant court would rule. They would reign, and they would make life and death be a plaything, and no one else would threaten them again. She smiled to herself. The blood of her latest victim covered her hands and the edges of her lips, and she smiled, a grim, disgusting, putrid smile.
I will win. There's no way they will ever be able to defeat me. Those puny wardens, they won't know what hit them. I've got my ultimate plan, and I'm going to put it in place soon. And when they feel the weight of my power, they will know that there is no one who can defeat Eris. Oh, Trevor, you fool. You've had 5 years, 5 good years, to defend yourself and your crappy little band. But guess what, my friend? Guess what? I've killed so many of your friends, so many of your relatives, so many of those you hold dear. But it's only the tip of the iceberg, my dear. Just be ready. I'm coming. And when I come, and my court are released in full, you will pay for everything that was done to me. You will pay with your lives. You will pay with your very soul. And I look forward to it. And I hope you burn.
Eris slams her hand on the desk where the picture of Trevor lies with his family. His mother's image has been scratched fiercely, almost as if fingernails or teeth had ripped it apart. His sister, as well, has received the same treatment. And in the midst of that stands Trevor, the only one untouched, the only one free from the grasp of Eris.
It was quiet. No ticking clock, no wind. Just the faint, slow sound of someone sleeping. A hushed yet thunderous noise in the absence of all other sound. In a large and comfy recliner slept a very old woman. Her hair a pale, faded green. Her skin a map of wrinkles etched with old and faded tattoos that seemed to move around her skin sluggishly. In her lap lay a red dragon, no bigger than a lapdog, curled in a ball and twitching slightly in its sleep as dreams of past deeds swept through its mind. The recliner sat in a small room with a tiny hearth, a single door, and what could be seen of the walls behind layers of paintings and drawings was log. About the room lay odd objects and tiny creatures out of pure fantasy. The single window showed nothing but darkness. The room shifted slightly, and a faint could be heard. The dragon lifted its head from the woman's lap and smacked its jaw sleepily, emitting a tiny puff of smoke as it yawned.
Is it time?
The room shifted again. Flapping its wings lightly before rising and gently stretching, the dragon then licked the woman's hand.
Mistress.
She shifted slightly before breathing settled back into sleep.
Mistress, it is time.
The dragon again licked her hand before giving her index finger a light nibble. Ow. Dragon.
Mistress, it is time.
Time for what, dragon? I was having the sweetest dream. But I cannot remember of what. Sighing, she pulled herself up straighter in the chair and began petting the dragon behind its head frill. It purred lightly, its eyes drifting closed. They both jolted in surprise, and the dragon huffed in frustration.
Yes, House, I know.
Dragon placed its feet on the woman's chest and brought its snout up to her face.
Mistress, it is time.
Faintly, the sound of a clock ticking could now be heard, and outside the one window sunlight began to stream in. There were sounds of a forest now coming in.
Time? Yes, time. It is time.
Stroking the dragon's head briefly, she gently pushed herself to her feet, the dragon taking brief flight to circle the small room and come around to land on her shoulder and wrap its tail about her neck. Stretching, the woman grasped a wooden cane that leaned against the chair.
In its absence, I had forgotten about time. But what time is it, dragon?
The last, mistress.
That one? Already? I had thought we had longer before that came to be.
It has been forever, and no time, mistress. All of the others are long gone. Even now the last fade.
The dragon pointed about the room with its front claw, and as they watched, some of the creatures sprawled about yawned, stretched, and faded away to nothing. The woman sighed, her back hunching and her expression growing sad.
I miss Jacob.
He, too, has long been gone, and yet was just here. You only completed that task but a short nap ago.
The woman blinked and ran her hand through her hair. It puffed up and seemed to swirl briefly in a non-existent breeze before settling against her frail skull once again.
Yes, I begin to remember. All is set in motion. But this last thing.
And it needs doing. You tasked me to protect that world, but I will have failed utterly if I never exist.
The woman chuckled lightly to herself as she shuffled to the door.
Oh, dear Zoe would have fits if she knew the true extent of the meddling,
she said, making air quotes. The dragon nodded.
One last adventure, my old friend,
she stated, reaching for the latch on the door. A tear trickled down her cheek, unnoticed.
Indeed.
The dragon gently lapped up the tear. Sunlight flooded the room as the door swung inward, and both breathed deep of the dense forest air. The trees were thick and the foliage dense, and the air had the cool, crisp tang of mountains to it. A few feet in front of and below them stood a very surprised-looking little girl, no more than 6 years old. Her hair was long and multicolored, and though tied back in a loose braid, bits still flew about her head in a wild fashion. Her wide eyes were one brown and one green, and in her grip was clasped tightly a sketchbook. The woman smiled kindly at her before tapping the side of what was a small hut.
Down, Chook. I am no longer spry enough to hop from this height.
The cabin shook slightly as it slowly lowered to the ground, large chicken feet tucking under it as it settled to the forest floor. The child's face had moved from awe to the straight-lipped look of haughty anger only small children seem able to manage.
That's Baba Yaga's house,
she yelled, pointing angrily at the woman.
She's got you there. Hee,
piped in the dragon, giggling to himself. Giving the dragon the side-eye, the woman hobbled down from the now low porch she had been standing on and took a few steps towards the girl before stopping.
Yes, you're correct. It is. But it is mine now, as she gave it to me when she passed away, so long ago now, in your future.
The girl scrunched her face up in apparent confusion. The old woman wiggled her fingers.
Wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, as Grandpa Raspy used to say.
The girl tilted her head sideways, squinting her eyes in thought.
You know Grandpa Raspy?
Once, yes. Very well. He is my Grandpa Raspy.
And once again wiggled her fingers and smiled benignly.
Are you?
Yes.
Oh,
The child shifted her feet in the leaves, making piles and pushing them away.
why are we here?
Because it is time.
The dragon huffed. The child stood waiting, swinging her feet. She did not appear to hear the dragon. The old woman turned her head to peer at the dragon on her shoulders. It had grown smaller, and its edges appeared fuzzy.
Oh my. Yes, it is indeed time.
What? Yes, I think she's kind of crazy too, Jacob.
The woman smiled.
Leelui, it is time for you and Jacob to go on an adventure. To see faraway places and amazing things. And I will show you how.
Really?
Yes.
Leelui.
A woman's voice came echoing through the trees.
That's Mom. I gotta get back soon.
I know. But first, I want you to think of somewheres you've always wanted to go. And then, when it is in your head, you draw a tunnel. And the tunnel will take you there, like in the cartoons you've seen.
The girl tilted her head again.
Jacob says he can't read you as well, but he thinks you are not lying.
Jacob is correct. I am not lying. Give it a try, before you have to go back.
Leelui.
The girl looked quickly behind her.
Mom is getting mad. I had better go.
First, please, try the tunnel.
The child sighed with her whole body
Okay.
and scribbled quickly in her book. Beside her, a large black hole appeared and began to swirl with varying shades of black. The woman bowed her head and quietly said,
Step through. You will only be gone a moment. Then you can go back to your mother.
Wow. Yeah, Jacob, it looks cool. I wonder if it actually goes to Lollipop Land.
and the child stepped forward and was pulled in, and the tunnel collapsed with a soft pop.
I'm sorry,
said the dragon and woman simultaneously.
Leelui, Jacob, Rasputin, Warner, where in the blazes are you?
Time to go.
Said the dragon. The old woman turned and hobbled back to the cabin, tapping the wall as she entered the doorway, causing it to rise up on its legs. Gently she shut the door as she moved back to the chair, the light outside the window fading back to black. Settling herself once more in the recliner, the room shifted a few times before settling still. Came faintly. And then the cabin seemed to simply be but a simple room. The presence that was Chook was gone. The dragon, now no bigger than a kitten, slithered from her shoulders and curled once more in her lap. The room was empty but for the drawings on the walls, the chair, and the woman and dragon on it.
I wonder what comes after, before, or next.
The dragon puffed.
Time to find out.
It snickered lightly at its seeming joke, closed its eyes, and faded away. The woman sat alone. Around her, the room grew fuzzy about its edges.
Time.
She shook her head gently, settling into the chair more comfortably.
Time. I am Leelui Jacob Rasputin Warner. And I...
In the emptiness before time, before space, before being, a tiny wooden cabin faded into nothingness as a bright burst of light, far away and yet very near, long ago and yet right now, blinked. This is the beginning.
Somewhere, or possibly somewhen, Leelui's chair along with her house, slowly disappears. Somewhere else, in a small white room with white walls and a white chair, sits a bemused Leo, staring at Zoe. Zoe, in turn, stares back at him, smiling as if she has all the time in the world. And as she does so, her eyes seem to be a strange world with pooling shadows of blues, purples, and deeper black hues, swirling rhythmically around her pupils. She looks young as always, but yet somehow aged in ways undreamt. She has the appearance of someone who has lived countless lives for countless generations, and brings the knowledge of the same. She pulls off her hat, brushes the felt edge quietly, when, suddenly, Leelui pops into existence, puts up her finger, opens her mouth wide to say something. She looks as young as she did when she was last traveling with Leo. Leo looks over before either could say anything. Zoe herself, looking at no one in particular, says, "See? I said it would get weird."
This has been a Distractions Media production. For more information, you can check out everything we do at distractionsmedia.com.